is your advice to give to people where it's like, okay, I have $3,000 to spend on monitors and room stuff. And like, mind you, they're hopefully going to be making more money in the future.
Yeah.
What should they spend that first, little bit of money on?
Got it. So,
and they have nothing.
Yeah, it is an inherently complex question because I think you sort of inevitably like end up getting into like this cost benefit analysis
Right.
in terms of like where you're going to get the most out of it, and that's tough to say.
Right.
I would say.
Just based on your own advice, your own experience of what you would do.
So let's assume your room isn't like insane in terms of like literal like design or materials construction, right. Whatever. Like let's just assume everything's like sort of down the middle.
Right.
Probably it's like, I would do a GIK thing. Like I would go to GIK.com.
Which is what we got right behind us here.
And like, I would look at getting some like basic paneling to cover your early reflections, to build yourself a cloud that's meaningful. I've often heard people talking about like, if there's only one thing you could do, it would be like put up a cloud.
Put up a cloud. I think that's, in this room, that made the biggest difference for me.
And an important thing to remember is that the distance between any of these boundaries, so any of your treatment and the wall, is almost as important as the depth of the treatment.
Right.
So if you have 4 inches of treatment and you put another 4 inches of space, that space is almost as effective as the 4 inches of treatment in front of it. So, oftentimes I see people like putting stuff right up against the wall, and if you can avoid that, don't do that.
There's sometimes like where you have to, because there's
this is where it gets get into technicalities, because like you can give advice until you're blue in the face, but there are some people who are going to be like, yeah, but in my case, I have to do it this way.
In my room in particular, it's like I would love to have them off the wall, but my room would feel a lot smaller.
Yes, And so what I would say is my first piece of advice is identify what you are mostly doing. I try and live my life by a rule now that solving for 99% of the problem is infinitely easier than solving for 100% of the problem.
Yep.
You are going to make something or design something or buy something that solves most of your issue, but it's not going to solve all of your issue, and you are literally going to kill yourself trying to solve all of your issues.
Yep, it's never going to happen.
Yes.
You can't, like, I've been in, basic bedroom studios. I've been in super nice $1 million studios.
Yeah.
And every single studio that I've been in has something wrong with it.
Yeah.
It could be very, very minor, but it's part of being a human, and that's just what it is.
Yeah. So if I break it down as fast as humanly possible, if we go, cool, if you're trying to go like mix master route, I would focus on treatments, and I would focus on monitoring, and I would focus on treatments first.
Yeah.
And the reason, like, don't get me wrong, great monitors are super important, and I'm not saying don't get those things.
Right.
But they are useless without that treatment.
Exactly.
So that's an important thing, to at least deal with that and then get a pair of monitors that's going to give you reasonable full range. Like it's very difficult to mix a song on Yamaha HS5s.
Yes.
Like, get the HS8s, which are a little bit more expensive. And don't get me wrong, I never want to go back to working on a pair of HS8s again, but I've worked on a lot worse.
Right.
So,
of course.
So it's like, you can get okay monitoring for sub $1,000. Okay, of course, being a relative term.
Right.
And
also, I think the thing too that a lot of people don't think about when they're building rooms, again, this is for producers, where you're also more than likely recording things, is that all that treatment is also going to help when you're recording.
Yes.
So you're getting 2 for 1 in that, and I give the same advice to people when they're like, should I spend money on monitors or room stuff? I'm like, get some room stuff to like make the room sound better.
Yes, and please recognize that things like the weird like egg carton foam stuff, like the Oralex, whatever, all that's doing is capturing really high frequency information and probably just skewing what you're hearing in general.
Yeah.
You need broadband. You need stuff from like GIK is great for like generic stuff.
Yep.
Like if you're going to build them, like Roxol Safe and Sound.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of information on that sort of.
A lot of great YouTube videos on how to make them yourself.
Yes.
If you're somewhat handy, they're actually quite easy to make.
And then in the other direction, anything that you have ever read is labeled as a bass trap is aggressively lying to you. Most broadband absorbers can't get below, 150 hertz sort of thing, maybe 100 hertz. So like nothing is capturing sub information anyways. Again, we're trying to solve for sub $3,000. Like I would start to deal with that, and I would get good monitoring. And you can change the level of that trade-off based on if you're trying to focus on writing production, then maybe you go a little bit more interesting in the monitors and a little bit less in the treatment because you're trying to have fun while you're listening. Or maybe it's you take some of the money and you invest in a great pair of headphones so that when you are listening in a stable mix environment, you can do that sort of thing. There's no magic bullet version of the thing. The first thing you have to do is identify who you're trying to be in music.
Right.
And then make your decision based on that information. Exactly. And then just make the next a great piece of advice I got from Nate Ferraro's mom, in fact, was you can only ever make the next best decision.
Right.
And it's a great piece of advice. Is like
phenomenal advice.
Decide one thing, make the next best decision based on that, and your career down the line, you're going to be like, damn, I wish I'd had these better monitors and this treatment and this preamp or whatever. You'll get there. It's going to happen.
And I think too, this is just to kind of end this conversation on this note, but like the thing that I think people get stuck in, where it's like, I'm going to buy something and be stuck with it, and that's absolutely not true. I think the one thing that's great about our industry is that almost every piece of gear, something physical, not a plugin, but any piece of gear, even these guys, they will hold most of their value.
Yes.
And you can resell it, and the resale market is very good for most music things. So, you can always work your way up. Moving on, we just spoke about Kings, We Are the Ones, which was one of your most insane and so, I don't even want to know how many tracks, but I feel like there were a lot of tracks in that. And like,